SuperCut! So, in a very short period of time, I watched 3 versions of Death on the Nile. The Nile. Because, I'm that nuts. So I also read the book because, you might as well. The book was very interesting. If you've seen any of the movies, they all do the story. So definitely any of them will tell you the story. So I'm not going to tell you the story here. It's about a murder. Surprisingly enough, it's Agatha Christie and Poirot's in it.
And somebody did it.
And oh yes, somebody did do it. Yes. And the book is like a jigsaw puzzle. The story in the book is like a jigsaw puzzle. It fits together wonderfully. Like, this is what Agatha Christie does best: a group of interesting characters in a place where they can't leave, and somebody is murdered, and somebody in that group did it. It wasn't a stranger who passed in the night. So, and you have a detective to figure it all out, and it works perfectly. The things I want to say about the book is this written in 1937 or 1936 when she wrote it, I'm sure. Came out in 1937. And the way that she talks about natives and in Egypt and that sort of thing that's not acceptable anymore. And you know, that's a thing. Yeah, the book was written a long time ago, and that reflects it. It's not that much, but it's sort of, now when you read it, you go, ooh, ouch, ouch. The other thing that was really ouch is that the plot, it starts with a young lady who is used to be with a young gentleman, and now the young gentleman is with another young lady, and this first young lady will not give up on her ex-young man, and she follows him, and wherever he goes with his new wife, she throws a scene, and basically we know that is like stalking. What she's doing is stalking. But the way that the married young lady Lynette asked Poirot to talk to Jackie about it, to Jacqueline, please stop it. She wants Jacqueline to stop following them. And the way that Poirot reacts is problematic, because he tells Lynette, you know, this you have nobody but yourself to blame. This is your own fault. Being stalked by he doesn't use the word stalk because it didn't exist at that time, but being followed by this lady is your fault for stealing her man. And I do understand why, because Agatha Christie is using Poirot to say these things. Agatha Christie was married, she fought happily, and then one day when Agatha was not at her best, her mother had just died, he comes and says, I want a divorce because I found another woman. So I understand why she is not in any way sympathetic to Lynette, but now in hindsight, which is what I have towards stuff that could have happened 8 years ago, is this kind of behavior ends in murder. And guess what happens in this book? It ends in bloody murder. And
the woman could also have had a mental health issue, which they wouldn't have taken into account at all.
And could have ended up in murder.
Or suicide, or any other really horrible thing.
Exactly. So these warning signs that basically this situation is screaming these warning signs, and Poirot, Agatha Christie by way of Poirot, is discarding that, and he sort of lets the whole thing happen, and that's problematic now, but like I said, it's set then, and stuff did go wrong then sometimes. They didn't know. There's lots of stuff they didn't know in 1937. They were very also not at. They knew that alcoholism happened, but the way that we think about alcoholism now, because alcoholism is also in this film, in this book, one of the characters is a novelist, a lady of now about 40s, 50s, and she drinks and is drunk every night, and they think it's perfectly all right. They call her, if anything, they call her a dipsomaniac, which, and then not do anything about it. Now we would go, oh my God, red flags, alarm bells, ding ding. As time progresses, because now these things happen 80 years ago, in another 20 years it'll be 100 years ago, and we will think about it differently then and again. And so the book is interesting. It's a very good book. I mean, really straight up. The story is wonderful and all these things. But it does age.
Yeah, so it's actually putting the finger on social awareness of things that we are aware of now. That they noticed these things happening then, but they weren't aware of how problematic they were, how pervasive they were, that it ruined life, and that there was something that could be done, that socially people could actually help each other, and that they could be taken to doctors and all sorts of, but they couldn't because the doctors didn't know anything. Yeah. So they were screwed.
They were screwed, and but in the case of the alcoholism, I understand that's not Poirot's purview, but the case of the stalking, that is Poirot's purview. Lynette comes to Poirot and asks, "Can you ask Jackie to quit it?" And then and basically he says, "I'll go talk to her," and he sort of vaguely talks to her, and he doesn't say to Jackie, "Hey, you're doing something that's hurting somebody." Basically, he says to Jackie, "You know, if you go this route, it will be bad for you." And Jackie agrees, but she goes the route anyway. He doesn't in any moment think to prevent what happens, basically the murder of Lynette. She asked him, and in one of the other stories in Murder on the Orient Express, the bad guy comes, the guy who gets killed also asks him, but he was a really thoroughly bad guy. Lynette is just a young lady. She's 20 years old. And he basically ignores her, and that's my view of 2022 about events fictitious events of 1937.
I would filter into that as well misogynism, the fact that men of that age would take young women of 20 and even older women, any woman, not seriously when they come with a problem. And this is not just the 1930s we're talking about. This is when we were growing up in the 80s and in the 90s. Same thing still happening. It's very, very recent that women are being taken seriously when they come up and say, "Hey, this is being done to me."
Yeah, and we now know that it ends badly. If it, I mean, it's not always ends badly, but the chance of ending badly is amplified. And so the way that social interactions, I mean, most of it, except for the stalking, most of it you go, yeah, okay, that's 1937. Miss Van Schuyler has her niece with her, and she makes her fetch and carry for her. For people who've seen the movie, that the role was deleted. Any of the movies, the role was not in the 2022 version and the 1978 version. The character was taken out because she's not that interesting. I think those inclusion of that kind of person who was in 1937 a sort of person that happened a lot, the daughter of, the cousin of, who came along to trips like that because they didn't have any money themselves and that was the only way to see the world. That works in this book, and it still works. It doesn't go away. But the stalking, it doesn't work anymore. We know now that it doesn't work. So, book is good to read. Go ahead and have fun and watch any of the movies. They're also goodish to good to really good.
Which one would you recommend?
The 1978 one. It's by far the best. But the 2004 one from the TV show, from the Poirot TV show, is very accurate. So it's straight up the book. You can it's verbatim. So yeah, go ahead. And that is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Since about 1990-ish, BBC English TV for British, not BBC for America or anything like that. It didn't exist in the 1990s yet. Showed every single Christmas Murder on the Orient Express. And because Christmas has 2 days, as you're going to show on the second day, you're going to show Death on the Nile. Because, of course, because that goes with Christmas, right? Like murder?
It goes with Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, so it's murder and Egypt and summertime. What more could you want on a Boxing Day?
Works for me. I'm ready for summer in December.
This film was shot in 1978, or shot just before 1978 came out. Had everybody in it. That was basically all of Great Hollywood was in it, and all of young Hollywood was also in it. British people, and I will put up a cast thingy here. Oh, everybody's in it. It actually won an Oscar for best costumes, and they are wonderful. I know a little bit more about costumes than I did when I first saw it many years ago. I've seen it enough. I've seen this thing enough times that I can say the lines before the character actually says them. It's really, I can't. I know this. The costumes are wonderful. It is set in 1937, but not everybody is young in this thing. There's an old lady, and there is a little younger older lady, and the old lady is played by Bette Davis, and she wears a 1910 outfits, which has a waistline here and lots of lace, and she has that kind of hat that goes with it, goes all the way here, and a big brim hat. Her companion wears sort of, played by Maggie Smith, by the way, Bowers, the companion. She wears a sort of a male influenced 1926, I would say. I would go get a catalogue for 1926 and you would see, yeah, she's wearing all that. Then the Salome Otterborn, who's played by Angela Lansbury, wears a full flapper 20s outfits, complete with ill-fitting sack made of sequins and a bandana like that. Everything, she's got it all, and it's amazing because she has like 4 or 5 of these things to wear, and the detail on that is so good. Then the entire color scheme of the people on the boat is pastels and cream and white with black accents. Everybody. And you look and you sort of go, but it's sort of, yeah, the Uncle Andrew who just came from America, he's wearing a pinstripe dark beige with black stripes. Yeah, that falls into the thing. But even so, he's still wearing the correct thing for him, coming from America. And the young lady's wearing blouses and skirts or flared pants. It's all wonderfully correct, and the people carry it off so beautifully. And then the sun on this picture, the real Egyptian sun, makes it real. And that's the scenes they have early in the movie. There's a scene at the pyramids, and they're the wind blows like desert wind blows, and they deal with it because they are really there, and it looks so good. The way you can see some of these people being hot in the weather, you can see it on their skin. Yes, so the looks of this thing is wonderful. That's why they keep playing this on the TV for the afternoon. You just put it on, and every time you look over, you have a beautiful image. The murder itself, because it is a murder story, is not even seen that much. It sort of happens just below the line of the line of the picture, you know. So I have also read the books, so I know what they changed. They did change a few things. They lost a couple of characters and 2 plot lines, and they mixed and matched a couple of characters. They make Colonel Race, who shows up, played by David Niven, because if you have David Niven, you use him. So they him and Ferguson take over a character that has disappeared. So, and with them goes the plot that actually came with Colonel Race, which was a spy plot, which has completely disappeared. Which was a little bit extraneous. Yeah, it's too much. There was a spy plot, and there was a jewelry forgery plot. But since there was already jewelry stealing plot, and there was so much going on, I think they were correct in dumping that. The script is wonderful, because I think it's like the guy who wrote it. I will put his name here. Because he's really good, and I have to look up if he actually got some Oscar or something for some sort of. It was beautiful. It is so precise, like he wrote it like a stage play, like he knows exactly where all the characters are at any given moment, doing whatever, like the original book does. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. The book is like a jigsaw puzzle, and he made sure that this jigsaw puzzle worked 100% for this movie. By condensing a lot, because the book is quite long and there's a lot of stuff going on, and he picks out just the right things to pinpoint, and what to drop and what to keep. And also there's a couple of things added which you can do on film and not so much on the book. One of the things they added, and I think it's not in the book, but there's this cobra that shows up, and I don't know if you remember the cobra. You remember the cobra? Because it's visually very interesting. It would have been less interesting in the book. And it doesn't happen in the book. But on the film it's very interesting, because it's one of the few action moments where you show that Poirot can trust Colonel Race to have his back at any given point. And it's a sort of a little character study in that way. If you think about it, probably somebody has to have had to put that snake there, and that's a little iffy. But I think that one, because they did it only a couple of these things and not any more than that, they didn't try to make it its own plot line. They made it just a little touch, and that's enough to say, okay, doesn't 100% fit, but I can understand why you did it, and I think it does work. Another thing they changed is the Von Schuyler dynamic with her Miss Bowers, because this Von Schuyler lady, American lady, Aunt Mary, came with a cousin, an American cousin, not very, sort of a young thing that was sort of hadn't quite decided which direction to go yet. And they left her out, and I think that, and they left her out, and then made, because they had Bette Davis to play Mrs. Von Schuyler, they used her reputation of really, being a nasty piece of work. They really built that up in this movie, and she plays it with gusto. She revels in it, and it works really well. So that's another change that actually works. You have to, they took the advantage of having Bette Davis and made that work. And of course, for a whole bunch of other things, like they have Mia Farrow to play Jackie. And Jackie herself, if you read the book, she's basically a very sad character. But because they have a really good actress to play her, who can play vulnerable and sharp at the same time, they do that. They give her the same dialogue as in the book, but they play it. When Poirot talks to her, they make her the sharpness come out that Mia Farrow has, that she can play. They make it come out, and I think that's another just a brilliant directing move. And I've seen this movie like a lot of times, as has many people, and it stood up to being completely scrutinized to death. It is at any point there's a couple of things where you say, okay, they filmed it in 1978, and now that's a little bit, no, politically not correct or socially not correct, and but it does work within the framework, and now we wouldn't do it like that anymore. We wouldn't want to, but it stands as a testament of the people who lived in 1937. It's the interesting thing about this film is that it was filmed in 78. The people who were 50s and 60s in 78 would have been 40 years earlier, would have been young people. The people who are young in the book would now have been 60. So people remember these times, and putting them down like that, that's interesting. If you make the film now, as has been made now, you're 80 years after the date. There's just nobody there who remembers any of this. So, as a testament of a 1978 look of 1937 if a non-event, because it didn't happen, but live world as was, is interesting. So, yeah, that's and in 78 they could still go to Egypt and film it there. They filmed it there, and that is one of the other amazing things about this movie. Now you'd have problems, all kinds of problems. And then they also had problems because it didn't go very smoothly, but they still, people were, in Egypt at least, enough interested in letting it happen, so they weren't stopped, basically. But it wasn't easy, let's put it that way. If you read the Mickey on how stuff happened, it wasn't easy. But this is a movie that we will be watching in 100 years, I think. So recommended? Yes, with bells on.
All right.
Yes. ITV, an English TV channel, has made the entire Agatha Christie oeuvre of Poirot into a series. We know that. David Suchet. Yay, we love it.
Which years?
The 89 to 2013? Yeah. Yes. Basically, it's entire lifetime of some of these people, This, yeah. They didn't start with like the big ones because they were smart. They were very smart when they made this. They started off with a couple of shorter of 1 hour, lesser known stories. They had to get permission from the Agatha Christie Foundation for this, and they did. To do this because Agatha Christie herself was not fond of TV. And they built up to about 2004 when they decided to do Death on the Nile. And actually had just read Death on the Nile, reread Death on the Nile for because I'd just seen the other film, so I was going, yeah, might as well. And I think one of the things they their issue would have been is that the other film, the famous 1978 movie, who everybody has seen and then some, because it's on every bloody Christmas in the UK, it's on TV. How do you deal with that? How can you top Peter Ustinov, Bette Davis, Mia Farrow? You can't.
And why would you try?
Well, you would. In this case, they had a good reason to try, because they were going to do all of them, and this is part of it. So, bite the bullet, get through it. So they made a choice, and I think it's the very smartest choice they could have made, is they simply did the book. Straight up. Basically, my list of things they left out and changed are like 3 items. 3.5 items. That's it. They changed. They left out a character who is not in any of the movies, so he's easy to leave out, and divvied up his part into 2 other parts, which worked fine. They let me check. They lost a spy. There was a spy plot that could easily be lost, and they lost that. That was the second one. The third one wasn't even very big. In the book, there are 2 young ladies who sort of daughters of, and they, at the end of the book, they get paired off with somebody, which is very heteronormative now-ish. And this film is from 2004, so not quite now, but getting to now. And it was a little bit unrealistic in their view. So one of the couples where the lady makes the advance on the guy, and he says, "Sorry, wrong tree." And I thought that was really well done. It's not a very major change, and I think that made it a little bit more modern, because yes, gay people also existed in 1937, you know?
Yeah, and not everyone who is single is looking for a mate.
That also. And the half change that they made, and I think that is, I had to think about that one, is that one of the 2 young ladies, they are very, one is an American and one is British, and they're not very anything basically, and so the American lady the young lady they made very American, very gung-ho, and that worked very well. So that basically fit very well with the way she was in the book. She was sort of inexperienced but ready to learn, and she was that way in the book, so that's fine. And then the English young lady, they made her very suave, which was not what she was in the book, so that's my half change. And I think it worked out. It worked very well, because it gave visually a more interesting thing to look at, because she had the makeup, and she looked like a fashion plate of the 1937. She looked like the hair like that, and the makeup like that, and the clothing. So that was a very good choice for being visually interesting. What they did with the visuals, they did go to, because the thing is set in Egypt, so they did go to Egypt. They went to places as well, so they had that local going, and the clothing, the looks, especially the makeup, was very strongly geared towards the 1930s exactly. I mean, everybody's wearing the latest fashion, young, old, everybody. With the hair as well, because if you look at fashion plates from the 1930s or pictures from the 1930s, you go, oh, that hair is very stylized. It's not modern in any way. I mean, they're ultra modern in their time, but the way they style their hair is not anything we would do this now. And they did that, and then some. They because Emily Blunt is actually playing Lynette. And I think Emily Blunt is like a dark blonde, like us. But the character in the book, she's a blonde straight up. So they made her blonde. She's now blonde. So they did exactly what was in the book. In fact, the lines are verbatim from the book. the only thing you can say that is a necessary evil of a film is that they can only spend so much time per scene. The books, the scenes are longer, but they touch every single scene at least in 2 or 3 lines. One that one person says, one the other person says, and you have the gist of it is there in everything, and they kept that going all the way to the end. Straight up. I mean, I've very seldom seen something as straight up like that, and I think that's the best choice they could have done compared to a movie that you cannot top. You simply cannot top that 1978 movie. It can't be done. So they didn't. They went, let's do straight up this, and I think that's it's definitely worth seeing. Especially if you see it if it comes up when you're watching the series and it comes up, enjoy the ride. It's a great ride. It's the most accurate version I've seen. Yeah, that's it's recommended. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Death on the Nile. Yet another Death on the Nile.
How many do we have?
This would be number 3. It's a moderate amount. This film it's a British movie, of course, and the Brits have been watching Death on the Nile every year at Christmas since 1990, about 30 years now. If you ask me why Death on the Nile at Christmas, I don't know, goes together with murder and Egypt goes together with Christmas. I don't know.
Maybe it's an anti-Christmas movie. Like
it's
give me sunshine and pyramids.
Yeah, I think it's just because they had the Murder on the Orient Express on, which is not Christmas but definitely snow. And then they had another afternoon left because you have Christmas Day and you have Boxing Day, so you have 2 days. And then they had a couple of movies, and then, that's how it goes. So, and that is actually the problem with this movie, is that everybody else saw that other one from 1978. Everybody saw it. Everybody knows exactly what's in it. And this movie, if you're going to do an Agatha Christie movie, you have to do the plots. If you don't do the plots, it doesn't work. I mean, it just Agatha Christie is not only about a certain group of people in a certain location doing upper classy things. It's also the plots. You have to do the plots. So they do the plots, but they try to not be that other movie. And it's costing them. Some of the things that other movie had, they can't replicate I'm not quite sure for what reason. The other movie was filmed in Egypt. This one is not. They sent a second unit to Egypt to do some filming, but the actors and stuff like that, they were not in Egypt. And so you have the advantage of having Egypt goes away as such. It's a backdrop. It's a set of scenery. This combined with the fact that Agatha Christie always has so many characters, which all need a certain screen time, which have a potential of becoming visually interesting. But the other movie did a couple of them already, and they had so many famous actors in the other one that this one is struggling for that concept. It has too many characters, and none of who can be featured. They're not featured like They try to push Poirot forward a little bit. They try to give him a background story, which he doesn't have. He never has a background story. There's some snippets, and if you track the Wikipedia, they made a sort of a timeline of what we know about him. This movie adds in World War I. In fact, when the movie opened, it starts with a scene in French in the trenches with I think he's a sergeant, Poirot, talking to his captain, Belgian of course, and he's established himself as a farmer. He's there, and they there's some sort of my peanut gallery is looking really really.
I don't see Poirot as a farmer, even in his roots.
No, everybody knows that this guy was always a cop. He was a bobby, or the Belgian equivalent of a bobby, before he became a detective, and then something happened, and that's why he left. We don't know what happened, but something happened. And he's also he's a young man in World War I, which obviously he's not. In the Death on the Nile is, I believe, written in 1937, and it's set in 1937, and that's like roughly 20 years after World War I, and he's 60. Everybody knows Poirot's roughly 50, 60. He was not a young man in World War I. So this thing was so confusing that to the audience, we were sitting quite at the back of the theater, because it was actually opening weekend, and we got to pick tickets a little bit on the late side, so we were at the back, which is not my preferred place, but I could see the audience. Somebody in the middle of the scene got up and left, and I for one moment thought, am I sure that I opened room 6 and not room 5 to go in? Are we in the right? It was just, it has nothing to do with this movie. And so you're establishing a piece of background that nobody asked for a character who, I mean, yes, Poirot is very important in this movie, but it is about a murder that happened to somebody else, and all these Agatha Christie ones, and that's why Agatha Christie is about the murderer and the murderee, the person who gets murdered, and yes, the sleuth is very important, but that person is not the feature. He or she is the linchpin. And this is why Poirot's bio, she never completed it. And same for Miss Marple's bio. It's not interesting. It's only interesting when either of them meet somebody from the past. So
that would make it Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, basically.
Where it's better not to be somebody from her past.
and she was,
your fiancé will die.
And basically she's trying to avoid that. And she specifically is looking for these detective types to be personally interesting, but not historically interesting. Not to have their personal history to be historical. Only thing we know about Miss Marple is that she lived in an English village all her life. That is all. And that she went to a really good school, because there were some ladies that she went to school with, or ladies like the one she would have gone to school with. That is all we know about her, and the same about Poirot. So why add this? I understand it's a centennial celebration, or not celebration, remembrance of World War I. So especially this film is actually mostly filmed in 2020, before 2019, and has been shelved for release later because COVID happened. So this harks back to centennial of World War I, and I understand that, but it doesn't belong in this movie. This movie is set in the mid-30s, late mid-30s, 1937, almost exactly. It's after the Roaring Twenties are done, and the crash of 29 has happened, and everybody's already used to that. People have moved on. It's 37. They're going towards another war, but they're not quite aware of it yet. So it's a very specific time, and that's what it is about. Basically, Agatha Christie wrote what she knew, and she was traveling at this period in her life. She was traveling around, and she would have been to Egypt at this time, been on a boat like Death on the Nile, the kind of boat they were on. So she knows, and they should have stuck to that. Why add this in? And that's the problem with this movie. Is I understand you want to not be like the other movie, but you're adding in stuff, or changing it, or doing stuff that's not careful with that. So there's a couple of things that I agree with that they changed. I mean, they have you have to have go with actors that you have. You have to. There's a couple of actors in here that I recognize that Kenneth Branagh has acted with them before on stage.
And you're saying Branagh is the
director and producer and the everything on this movie.
So he
plays Poirot.
Oh, now it got a lot more interesting.
Oh yeah, and he plays. I mean, I have no issue with that. Other than he is a very different Poirot from what we've seen before, but I can that's not an issue.
Okay, so Branagh is director, producer, and the lead character. So this is a passion project.
Yes, but it's already number 2. He did Our Murder on the Orient Express as well, which I hope to do a thingy about later. But this one I actually have to see in the movie, so I wanted to talk about this one. So some of the people on the cast are people that sometimes you recognize from British TV. French and Solness are in this, which is rather cute. Everybody loved that. That's very good. But the lady who plays Salome Otterborn, and I have to look up the name. And Sophie Okonedo, who is she is a very famous stage actress in England. Occasionally you see her on TV. She was in the 2012 Shakespeare plays. The Hollow Crown, she was in that. She's very good, and they had her play a role that she could play, because there's a couple of young women on board, but there's a couple of older women on board, and she plays Salome Otterborn, and they changed her role because the cast of characters of the original book in 1937 is white, and white. So, for reason of casting, I don't know, they have Gal Gadot as Lynette, Gal Gadot, and she's white enough,
Middle Eastern
looking, and to complement that, she has the chap who plays Cousin Andrew. Is definitely Middle Eastern. It's more direction India. So we have Salome Otterborn, who is now black descendant, and her daughter, who's also black. But in the book, Salome Otterborn is a very drunk, sleazy novel writer. Sexy novels, the trash. And they went a different route with this. In this, she is a singer of blues. For those who were sitting there going, oh, that sounds really good and very authentic, the blues that is sung in there is 100% authentic. It is mostly Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who was at her top in the 1930s and 40s, so that's contemporary music. All the music that Salome sings is her music, her original music, remastered, but not re-sung or anything like that, it's remastered. So that's wonderful. That's for the color locale, the mood and the stage and stuff like that. It's wonderful. These things are absolutely no problem. One of the stranger things that they changed. Let me go back. When they put in the black characters, they can now put in a subplot of because in the end, this murder is about Lynette get killed, and it turns out everybody who is on board the ship had something against her. So everybody could possibly have murdered her, because that's how these stories go. And in the original, the drunk author had put out a sleazy book, and Lynette had put a stop to it, so stopped her publication basically, and so she was pissed. The question is it enough to kill her? And in this version, the black singer Salome Otterborn was once turned away was more complicated. Basically, she was turned away by a very young Lynette, maybe 9 years old, because she was black. And maybe that's the reason for killing Lynette. So that these things come up, and that's okay, I think. It tells more about how we feel about these matters now, of a person of color or not color, and when they were and where they were and how people were looking at them. I did after this read the book, and the way they deal with it is completely different, and possibly, I don't know if you have to make a choice. Are you going to make a movie that shows 1937? Or are you going to make a movie that shows some sort of what we think is also part of 1930? What we think it is. But instantly this thing is dated already. Because in 20 years we'll feel differently about it. And we'll find that this subplot of the colored family of the Otterborns being slighted in that way, and being and thinking that is actually a motive for murder, it's going to be different, and so that's a problematic thing. What I did like was the adding French and Saunders. For those who don't know, that is a bit famous comic duo, and they put them in the space of the elderly lady and her companion, which was a perfectly normal thing in 1937, or even many years before that. And they updated it to be a couple of different means, but together. They were roommates. And yes, they are more than roommates. And that is a good way to do it. It's what he then does is also make the Saunders character, Mrs. van Schuyler, also makes her the godmother of Lynette, which I think is not in the book at all. And why? They're just holiday people thrown together on a boat, so why would she be?
They don't have to be related to each other.
They don't have to be any more related to each other than they have to be. There's a lot of stuff people are on that boat because of Lynette that are in the book. The book has the most plot, of course, because book. But there are a couple of people on that boat that really are there because Lynette is there. For one, Cousin Andrew, who now is in trouble because Lynette married and is going to find out that he's been swindling all her money affairs, and he was trying to get her to sign something before, So not everybody is there for legitimate reasons, and a lot of them turn out to have something to do with Lynette, one way or another. And that's of course a good way for a plot.
Can I get back to the lesbian couple? Is it?
They were roommates
for 50 years. And they had one main bedroom and a tiny little room for one of the other.
Yeah, and it was always properly dressed and never disturbed.
Yes, they were very neat. No, is it text or is it subtext?
No, it's straight up text.
Oh, awesome!
because and that's a spoiler, but I'm hoping you're going to see it anyway. Because Poirot has to figure out how everything works. Any secret has to come up because somebody got murdered. So this secret comes up. He notices that the bed in the other room still has the hospital corners that's from the first day still on it. So
love it,
yes.
love it. That's also good commentary.
That's the writing on that is fine. That's not a problem. The other thing is that and I don't know how that happened, but in the book there's a character that never made it to that 1978 movie, a young man with a mother, and for some reason they put the young man with the mother in this one, but gave him completely different names. In fact, they gave him the name of a character from the Murder on the Orient Express. And it's going, what? Why? I mean, he's called Tim Allerton in the original book. And now he's called Mr. Book. B-O-U-C. I don't understand. So, why? The subplot that belongs to those characters in the book don't happen in this movie or in the other movie. There's like a couple of sub stories that don't happen in this movie. One thing that they changed, and I think that's actually a good thing, is in the original, and this is a spoiler, sorry, but everybody's seen the other movie, so it's in that. There are 3 murders, and they're all women. And in this one, Salome Otterborn does not get killed. Here, somebody else gets killed. A male gets killed. And that means that, in murder, we know the statistics of actual murder. Men commit them and women get killed. And that's very sad. So changing that up is not a bad idea in this case. It does...
You're still looking at 2-1. Two women dead, 1 male dead.
Yeah. It's at least it's a little bit more equal. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter if this male murder is a male or a female. So the fact that the murder happened is more important. But it leaves Salome Otterborn open for Salome Otterborn, who is now a jazz singer, a person who you actually can talk to. And there is actually a scene in here of Poirot and Salome, who are roughly the same age, talking. And the whole thing ends with him, once they've gone on shore, visiting her club and listening to her sing. So, and the talk that they have is actually very interesting. They talk actually, I think, before the very first murder happens. Everybody's on holiday. They're talking about the future, and one of the things I think he says that he says something about wanting to grow marrows retire and grow marrows and pumpkin kind of things. That's what they are. And this is actually what he does in one of the other books in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. So maybe, hopefully, that is one that Kenneth Branagh is going to be doing. I think that's the plan. So he gave Poirot a past, and he's giving Poirot a future in a retirement and a possible lady friend. So that is very interesting. Overall, I think the film is worth seeing. It's not the best of the versions. It's an okay film.
Visually, how was it?
Visually, it was wonderful. They didn't go to Egypt, like I said, but they all the other scenery and the costumes are wonderful. The actors are really good. They're not as wonderful as the other film, because Mia Farrow, Betty Davis, it's very hard to top. So there's not that, but the production is wonderful. I think they spent the money well. The only thing is, I think maybe it's a little bit on the short side, and they could have done some of the human interaction scenes a little longer. But that's not the style right now. Right now is go fast, 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 and lots of visuals. So that's wonderful. They have to show some of the Egyptian temples. They go to Karnak and to Abu Simbel, all fake in this version, of course, and the pyramids, and it's beautiful. So that seems to be never an issue nowadays. The films aren't ugly anymore.
Even without going there with the cast to film, they still manage to do that.
Yeah, with the way they have CGI, I'm sure that they some of the visuals of the boat going up the Nile have been definitely a second unit filming Nile and then putting in a boat or even actually having a boat there. It's just that the sun-kissed way that the other one was, the way you could see that Mia Farrow comes into a temple and you know her skin is hot, and that was not in this movie. Can't be in this movie, not like that. So it is a bit more plastic than I would like than the other one, and it's going to get compared to keeps getting compared to the other one because if you choose to do a film like that, you're going to get compared to the most famous thing ever. So,
what's your opinion?
Yeah, it's worth seeing. It's not a waste of your 2 hours and 4 minutes. So, I don't know. Can you ask more for that than that? You know, you would want it to be absolutely wonderfully brilliant. They did the story. They did it properly. There were a couple of times where I said, "Oh, that could have been a little bit clearer." But that's fine.
But did they hit the beloved points that you want out of this story?
You want the murder. You want the murder scene happening because it happened on that boat, and then you want Poirot to go over it in the right way to come to the right conclusion, and he did that. That he actually has to draw a gun on somebody, that's a sort of a little bit more Wild West than I would like Poirot to be. But if you make his history that he's actually a soldier or has been a soldier in World War One, okay, you
I was just thinking Belgian cowboy, and I just can't envision it at all.
The moustaches. They gave him the whole backstory with the lady he lost in the war and all that kind of thing. And you know what? It doesn't need it. It really doesn't need it. I think on that point they wasted their time. It was very pretty, by the way. I loved the fashions that the lady in the war wore because they are correct. I loved the fashions that they were in the 1937 sequence of the film. As far as I could tell, most of this stuff is very much correct. The hairstyles were pretty good. Could have been. It's very stylized hairstyles. 37 is still with very stylized ringlets, which they didn't do quite as much, but they did. The dresses were very nice. The locations where they are, that boat is very nice. The hotel they are before that is also very nice. Did show the opulence of that time, and yeah.
Because these were the rich. These were the absolute rich people.
Yes, the rich people. Basically yes. Going to the colonial places, basically. Still in 37, it's still colonial. Yeah. So, yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
And that's your opinion.
And I'm sticking to it.